We're back, and Peter, things move fast in the NBA offseason. It's not the slow trickle of baseball. So mid-July, here we are. It's a good time to take stock of where the league stands. And the headline, I think, for me is I'm really excited because the uncertainty that we've discussed as increasing over the past couple of years is still there, and maybe even more so after the moves this offseason.
I think that's right. I think it's fun to think about just how many teams, not our obvious championship contenders, but Jordan, how many teams are in the league now where you could construct a plausible case that if everything happens to break right for them this year, they could win a championship? I started going down the list. It's more than half the league.
First of all, you're seeing it reflected in championship odds. Okay. So there are 8 teams with plus 1,100 odds or shorter right now on DraftKings. You've got the Celtics leading the way at plus 295, but then the 76ers are plus 800 to win the championship. The Thunder are plus 850. The Nuggets plus 850. The Knicks plus 950. And the Timberwolves plus 11. The Timberwolves plus 1,000. The Mavs plus 1,000. And the Bucks plus 1,100. Last year in the preseason, there were only 4 teams that met that threshold. Now, what's interesting is last year, you then had a whole bunch of teams between plus 1,200 and plus 2,500. This year, it jumps from the Bucks to plus 1,100 to the Lakers at plus 3,000. So,
wait, so stratify that out, Jordan. This year, it's the Celtics on the top, and there's 7 teams down to plus 1,100. Then you go all the way down to plus 3,000, right? Last year, you're right. There were 15 teams that were plus 5,000, or better. It wasn't layered in those clear strata like it was this year.
Correct. I would say there's a first strata right now of 8 teams, and then it really jumped. There's no second tier. It's almost like you go to the third tier where you don't have the second tier teams like last year, like the Heat at plus 1,600 and the Lakers at plus 1,500 and the 76ers at plus 1,800. Those are last year's preseason odds.
Right. But, now wait. In part, that's because the betting markets have decided that sitting up by themselves are the Celtics at plus 295, right? And then it goes down to plus 800. And so, but I kind of think, I'm wondering if you do too, that the Celtics should be we should think about the Celtics more as one of those top 8 when we talk about who actually has championship potential. It's not, I don't know about them being like that one team and then 7 others in contention.
Let's get into that in a second. I do think there's some separation. I think they're the worthy favorite, and I think that you can make a more compelling choice with them. But what I'm finding interesting is the absence of that second group. So you have the drop-off between the Bucks at plus 1,100 and the Lakers at plus 3,000. And I think based off what we've seen the past couple of years, especially in the playoffs, a team like the Mavericks emerging in the playoffs as a 50-win team, a team the year before, the Miami Heat, making a run all the way to the finals, that I think some of those teams in the plus 3,000, plus 3,500, plus 4,000 range are being underrated by the market, okay? So, for instance, take the Suns, all right? Very disappointing right now, obviously. They crashed and burned in the playoffs, but look, this team won 49 games. The Mavericks won 50. Yes, the Mavericks succeeded in the playoffs. The Suns didn't. But is that recency bias or is that true analysis? I don't think you can say there should be a gap as big as, a difference of plus 2,500 between those teams. I don't think that's justifiable. I think you have teams like the Pelicans at plus 5,000. I'm gonna die on this island.
No. But Jordan, last year at this time, we were saying that there were teams down there that Memphis is another one, right? Who looked really good for stretches too, like the year before, had a plausible shot. And I think it's just the disappointments of what went wrong last season that's causing them to be so underrated. I think what you're talking about is there's chaos in that level of teams like right under the Celtics, but beneath that, down in this plus 3,000 and longer shots, there's some value. There's some interest.
The Pelicans won 40. The Pelicans won 49 games. The Cavaliers won 48 games. Compare that to the Bucks who won 49 or the Mavericks who won 50. Yes, regular season is a little bit different, but those teams had some bad health and bad luck too. So what I'm saying all of this to get to your original point, which is you can construct a scenario where those teams take a leap. And the reason why you can is because you've seen teams from that mid-pack make the leap recently, whether it was the Grizzlies the season you mentioned, whether it was the Mavericks in the playoffs last year and so forth. They don't have that far to go. So let's start with the Pelicans, okay? They've added DeJounte Murray, who I think has become somewhat underrated because of some of the struggles in Atlanta. So that backcourt with CJ McCollum is dynamite. Who knows what's going to happen with Brandon Ingram, but let's assume they keep him, okay? You now have an incredibly deep perimeter with those two guards, Ingram and Zion Williamson, if healthy, and then Herb Jones and Trey Murphy off the bench. They need a center. What's the easiest thing to find in the NBA right now?
Well, as Knicks fans, we hope it's a center.
A replacement level, shot blocking, rim running, decent center. Okay, they will continue to address that. They signed Daniel Tice. There will be more moves. And again, maybe they move Ingram, but that team is super interesting. All right, the Grizzlies. Actually, the market's reading them, at least they're plus 4,000 after their terrible season. What happens if Ja's healthy again and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane? That team's not a contender in the West?
Look, I think they definitely are. I'd also mention, because I'm fascinated with teams that try to change their character a little as they try to bounce back from real disappointment. I'm interested in the Warriors. The Warriors are at plus 4,000. Jordan, they kept Kuminga. They got rid of Klay Thompson and Chris Paul, but they brought in DeAnthony Melton, who I think helped the Sixers a lot when he was healthy. And they brought in Kyle Anderson, who is really slow, but did it all for Minnesota. They brought in valuable players. And I am fascinated by the specter of this team that still has one of the 10 greatest players in NBA history on it at plus 4,000. I'm just saying, you can construct a scenario where they get younger and the younger players help them a lot, and Curry's great again, and they do a lot better than people expect.
I can't construct a championship scenario for them that doesn't involve a major trade. Supposedly they're interested in Lauri Markkanen, but I don't think they have enough scoring right now, believe it or not. And Andrew Wiggins, I don't even know what's going on there. One other team I want to highlight before
their odds are longer than the Lakers, Jordan. It's crazy.
Well, and what's interesting here is that you've seen some teams based off their offseason moves vault up, like the Knicks plus 950.
Yep.
But the Nuggets are still sitting there at plus 850, and it's really hard. They've been so frugal, and letting KCP go.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to see them not fully take advantage of having arguably the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, and continue to surround him with enough talent. Jamal Murray's great. Yes, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., but they continue to let ancillary pieces who are key to the championship run leave, and they're asking a lot of young players to step up and make big contributions. It's fascinating. But look, all it means is that the NBA is going to be super fun to follow this year. So maybe make a couple futures bets now. This has been a summer of soccer, as you know, Copa America, the Euros. We made a bunch of picks, and we're going to debut a new segment we like to call Nailed It, brought to you by DraftKings. Think you can nail it? Head over to our friends at DraftKings for the best odds and lines, especially on futures markets. New customers bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code Underdogs in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. And Peter, the crown is ours because we got a lot of these soccer picks right. And the reason I want to do this is not to pat ourselves on the back.
Oh, come on. Yes, it is. We nailed it.
Although that's fun. The key is we talk a lot about learning from mistakes as we prognosticate. It's also important to learn from what you do right and try to replicate it. So Peter,
and that's why we do so much learning, Jordan. We learn from what we got right and what we got wrong. We never stop. We never stop learning.
So to run through a few picks, just last week, we told you take the under total goals, under 2.5 in the Switzerland-England game. It was 1-1 after regulation. We won that. Peter, you were singing the praises of Venezuela as a dangerous group-winning underdog in Copa America. Venezuela came through, won the group. Peter, you were all over Uruguay as a co-favorite. They beat Brazil, and I mentioned a bunch of reasons why the U.S. was going to have a really, really hard road. I thought they'd get out of the group. Thanks, Tim Weah, but red card didn't help. But this was not a team that was going to compete for a Copa championship. Peter, there are some grand lessons that sort of drove our choices throughout both competitions, Euro and Copa, right?
Look, one, teams can change very quickly these days, putting national teams together. When teams are improving rapidly, it's not reflected in their traditional ratings. You have to keep an eye on that. That's what clued us into Venezuela. This came together and we're playing really great recently. And they still were at the moment where they got knocked out by Canada in the second round of penalty kicks. Number two, obstructionist defense. keeps you in games. If you give up the first goal, you can lose. If you do everything, take every risk to not give up even one goal, you can beat a much better squad. That's proven true. Number 3, these have been tight, nasty, goal-keeping focused games in the Euros. What everyone who's a big longtime fan is kind of saying, the tournament ball seems to be over, maybe overstated, but there is something in the idea that defense matters a lot when players are playing more in club matches and fewer months together as national teams in the Copa America. That's why we love Uruguay. Look, Bielsa as a coach relentlessly trains and conditions his players. They call his practices murder ball. You know, I'm talking about the coach who sits on the portable cooler and gives these amazing press conferences. Okay. They are conditioned and in mind and body for these kind of ugly, nasty, tight games. Uruguay committed 26 fouls in beating Brazil. It seemed to stun the announcers on Fox. They were like, this is ugly. This is ugly. Yeah, it's ugly, but it's effective. Ugliness wins in these low-scoring soccer games.
And look, in Euro, the ultimate results have gone largely according to form. I think Spain, obviously, I don't think anyone realized quite how good they were. They were plus 700 before the tournament. So they've clearly, to your point about how teams can change quickly, that changed a lot. But you do have to pay attention to the fact that in tournament play, you're hunting, maybe not for an underdog champion, but you're hunting for underdog scenarios. And to your point, always look out for that obstructionist side. Always look out for someone who can disrupt the game. And that's how you find an underdog. And Peter, you can find the underdogs every week here on the DraftKings Network or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next week, we'll see you.